Okay, so I wanted to make a vlog today to talk about the classroom dynamics and how different classrooms react different ways to the same topic. So recently I was given the opportunity to visit Dr. Reed's all four of her classes this semester. And I'm the TA for only one of them, so I know those students fairly well and have gotten the opportunity to interact with them and see how they approach assignments and their thought process and everything involved with being their TA. But as far as the other three classes, I had never met them before. They had never seen me, and they all kind of felt very standoffish. I mean, the way that I approached them first, of course, was a determining factor in how they were going to interact with me. But for the first class that I went to, which was a 9 a.m. class, they seemed very apprehensive to accept anybody new. I did go into the classroom with my headphones on, which is a normal routine that I do in the mornings before my classes, and so I just wasn't even thinking about how they were going to view that. But they all looked at me, waited for Dr. Reed to introduce me to the class before they even said anything, and then even after the presentation that I gave, they seemed weird. Like, because for the three other classes, we decided to do the presentation that I was going to give at the end of class, or at the beginning of class, excuse me. And for this 9 a.m. class, I presented at the very end, so I didn't interact with the class much afterward or get their feedback on what they thought about my presentation. So it was just kind of a weird class. And then when we went into the 10 a.m. class, Dr. Reed and I had discussed and realized that I needed a little bit more time to present because the presentation was rushed at the end of her first class. And with the three remaining classes, we didn't get to as much of the normal classroom material that we had gotten to in the 9 a.m. class. Mostly it was focused on my presentation and what they thought, or what they thought, how it could be fixed or what was good about it. So pretty much for their second presentation assignment for this class, I had developed a plan for it, and like a lesson plan, and wanted the students to find a person in the VCU community and find out their past, their present, their future, get data on them, do a complete, biography on this person, but also incorporating these specific demographics and how those demographics influence this person. And I also wanted them to view how the local community, not exactly VCU students or staff members, if that was a person that they interviewed, I wanted them to explore how that person of the Richmond and VCU community viewed students and the school as a whole, and if they felt like living in Richmond and near VCU influenced them in any way. But most of the students didn't see, in my presentation that I gave to them as a sample presentation, I interviewed a friend of mine who is not associated with VCU. Currently, he's a VCU alumni, but he's not really associated as far as a student or staff member. And they seemed to understand the presentation, understand the materials I was giving to them. They had positive feedback, they had negative feedback. It was all pretty cohesive. And then when we got to the actual presentations, which I'll do another vlog on that when the time comes, but when I was being interviewed by my group, the questions in class that they were asking prior to this presentation and after this presentation as a dialogue about the presentation that they were supposed to give, they didn't seem to understand the material as well, and that might just be the way the assignment was presented to them. And it's kind of sad because I took the time to do an actual presentation for them and they didn't understand it at all, or they didn't seem to think that my way of presenting it was the most accurate way of depicting a person's life. But it was really nice to get to see different classes and be able to change my presentation based on the class feedback. So I gave my presentation 4 times. These students will only give their presentation once. But it was nice to be able to hear what other people thought and then fix my presentation accordingly. So the first class, no feedback. but feedback from the teacher. The second class, you know, I got some feedback, some good feedback from them of things that like I might want to include in my presentation, because with doing a PowerPoint, it's not just reading from the slides. It's, you know, including key phrases on your slides, but really going into a dialogue about what those mean and understanding your person fully, which I think I did because I was able to change what I said in each presentation. But the fact that I was able to give mine 4 times, by the end of the day, I thought that, you know, I had perfected it in a 15-minute time period. Obviously, I could talk about the person I interviewed more in depth, but it was also interesting to see how different ideas in different classrooms that were presented by the teacher were intercepted by the students, and then how different classrooms came up with very different ideas. And like with the classroom discussion about the Duggar family and, you know, Mormons having multiple marriages and polygamy and all of that, like the way that students viewed that and how the classroom discussion changed from one class to another was really interesting to view, and to see how, you know, the actual professor dealt with the different topics and the way that students appeared. And it wasn't like one idea was being forced on them. It was more like they were allowed to view things in their way, and then you just expand on it and find new things. So that was really interesting. And I think the ability to see, which I think would actually be beneficial to TAs, would be to be able to go to different classes, be able to go to all of the professors' classes. Obviously, my schedule allowed for it, but some people aren't allowed, you know, wouldn't have the time to do that. But I think it's really interesting to see how a certain professor interacts with different students, and I benefited from that one day of class and how I'm able to interact with my class that I TA for.